Hello, viewers. Welcome back to our YouTube channel. We are continuing with our study on the anthology of short stories, A Silent Song, and Other Stories. Today, we will be looking at the sins of the fathers. In this story, we will highlight the issue of parenting. Parenting is one crucial area that will determine the leap that our continent has made in very few years to come. Family is the basic unit of the society, and more emphasis should be placed on the family and making the family work. In this story, we are told or we learn that there are certain mistakes that parents make in raising their children. It is interestingly specific to parents, to fathers, because the story has been entitled The Sins of the Fathers. Before we continue, viewers, I would like to thank you very much for your support. We cannot get this far without your assistance. Those who are also visiting this channel for the first time, allow me to ask you to click onto that subscribe button so that anytime we produce a video like this, YouTube will notify you. The father in this story is one Mr. Wafa. Mr. Wafa is an ex-security minister. He has brought forth a son, Rondo Wafa. What are some of the mistakes that Mr. Wafa makes in parenting? At first, we realize that Mr. Wafa humiliates his son. He tries to discourage his budding talents and also his interest. We're told that when an uncle to Rondo, that is his son, gave Rondo a guitar, and he came back home in Old Canaan, Highfield, where they lived, he found Rondo strumming that guitar tunelessly, broke the strings, and took the guitar, burnt it into flames. In doing this, he was trying to tell Rondo that in his family, that is the Rwanda family, Rwafa family, that no Rwafa is going to take after the Mike Jaggers and the John Whites, who are moving from one place to the other aimlessly without any destinations. That the guitarists are just playing their guitars in trains with no destination in mind. Rondo's courage is gutted at this point, and he goes through life with low self-esteem. The second mistake that Mr. Wafa, the ex-security minister, makes is that of unwarranted and unjustified beating of Rondo. There is an interesting Mango saga. I tend to call it the Mango saga. In talking about the Mango saga, there was a time that Rondo got attracted to the neighbor's mangoes, and then he decided to help himself to some mangoes. He saw no mistake in that. The neighbor pulled down his leg and gave him a thorough thrashing. It required the intervention of the mother, who came pulling up her skirts and shouting how the neighbor is a child murderer. To our surprise, when Rondo's father, that is Mr. Wafa, comes, he also joins the beating of the son without asking what has happened. So this kind of unwarranted beating by the father, as we come to find out from the story, really makes Rondo to be traumatized. He can't help but forget this happening, as he says in the text. Mr. Wafa also shows utter contempt towards his son, and this comes out in the abusive verbiage that Mr. Wafa has towards Rondo. During the guitar saga, when he decided to take the guitar and burn it to ashes, our attention gets attracted to the name or how he calls Rondo. He calls him scum. Later on, he calls him slob, a good for nothing. And that is when he finally tells Rondo that it is time he earns his upkeep. At a point, he refers to Rondo as an effeminate, spineless son of the Rwafas, who has decided to disgrace the name of the family by getting married to an ignominious girl. It is also interesting that at the time that Rondo wants to get married, he is opposed to Rondo's choice of a lady. Rondo's love for Selena would not be thawed even by the father's great opposition to their marriage. And Rondo is really disturbed, is distraught, in that he normally sees the mother and Selena get along well, but then the father, Mr. Wafa, seems to frown and spat at that kind of relationship. When Rondo asks the mother what could be the problem, what could be the justification of the father's dislike for Selena, then the mother mentions a war that must have been fought years back between Mr. Wafa's clan of Zezuru Karanga against the clan that Selena comes from, that is Mzviti Ndembele. It is also interesting that on the day that Selena is being introduced, after Mr. Wafa has asked who her people are, and Rondo has given the answer, it comes out clearly that Mr. Wafa does not really barrack for such a relationship. And this is seen in him walking out and never coming back on that day. So these four things are some of the things that really come out as the sins of this father. There is the unwarranted punishment. Yes, it is right to punish a child, but then there should be a justification to that kind of punishment. So then Mr. Rofa fails the test. Number two, in the 21st century that we are living in, it requires some kind of open-mindedness and dynamism, in that when a son or maybe a daughter has made a choice on a spouse, if a parent tries to exert an overbearing influence or authority over the child, then we could be likened to someone riding on a tiger, because the backlash can be felt on you. The other one is that of humiliation. We come to realize that Mr. Wafa, his zeal and zest for his job, for whatever he does, really puts him in a position that he would like to project his deferred dreams, his deferred aspirations on the son. And it is quite interesting that even at the draconian paper where Rondo, who is a journalist, works, it is the father who had picked him and gave him the job. And that also explains the reason why, inadvertently, whenever Rondo appears, his workmates keep on laughing at him. He's a laughing stock, and he lacks belief in himself. He does not really believe in himself. And these ones are just occasioned by the overbearing influence of the father, Mr. Rofa. Some good news for us. Rondo's mother, Mrs. Rofa, seems to be an antidote to the missteps, the kind of shortcomings by her husband. She seems to fill in the gap for her. She is welcoming, while the father, that is Mr. Wafa, is strongly opposed to the marriage between Selena and Rondo. Mrs. Wafa seems to welcome Selena, and it is mentioned in the text that it took the support of Selena, Rondo's mother, and the father-in-law, Basil Mzamani, to ensure that their marriage saw the light of the day. It is quite interesting how decisive and open-minded Mrs. Ruafa becomes to ensure that this marriage really comes to fruition. Mrs. Ruafa also seems to be motherly. The story begins when Rondo and the wife Selena are mourning their two children, Yuna and Rhoda, who are 6 and 5 respectively, and Basil Muzaman, who also died in an accident. So this couple has not slept for the 1 week that they have been mourning at their home in Borrowdale. The mother to Rondo takes it upon herself to make Selena sleep. Finally, she has had sleepless nights for quite some time. And Selena makes a statement to Rondo that his mother is a great woman. She has taken to Rondo's mother as her own mother or an old friend. It is evident in the text. So her motherly and caring and concerned nature also thaws the tension in this home. She is also wise, and her wisdom shows when she fails to accelerate the growing tension and conflict between father and son. It is evident and it's quite true that there is a kind of taut relationship between Rondo's father and Rondo. So there was even a time, and that one brings out her protective nature. There was this saga about the neighbor's mangoes when Rondo decided to help himself to the mango. And we see the protective Mrs. Ruafa go out there to the neighbor who is giving Rondo a thorough thrashing, pulls up her skirts, screams out loud, calls the man a child murderer, and do all sorts of these things. Even when the husband, Mr. Wafa, joins in the beating of Rondo, we see Mr. We see Mrs. Wafa come there begging, clapping her hands, kneeling on the ground, and moving back and forth from one man to the other with the intention of telling this man to leave her only son, her only child alone. So after that, it is quite interesting that instead of accelerating this kind of conflict that is brewing between Rondo and Mr. Wafa, she tells the son that, you know what, your father loves you. It is just that he does not know the way that he can express that love. A contemporary woman would really take advantage of such a situation and would bring about the acceleration of the conflict that exists between father and son. But then Mrs. Ruafa is shrewd, is wise, and does not want to throw her home to the dogs. It is quite interesting that the mistakes of the father in this story, that is Mr. Ruafa, leads to his home being a crime scene. At the end of the story, when Rondo, having analyzed the situation and having been given some news by a Mr. Gaston that the father could be the one responsible for the accident that must have been artificially engineered to kill his two daughters and his father-in-law, Basil Muzamani, we come to see that Rondo goes to the guest room where the father is resting, holding a gun. Oblivious of what is going on, Selina also goes into that room holding a gun. The father, Mr. Wafa, also brings out his pistol. So this is a crime scene, and it is the making of Mr. Wafa. Mr. Wafa not really following keenly the development of the son and not allowing the son to lead his life, allowing him some space to lead his life, and having that overbearing influence now leads his home to a chaotic hotpot. Viewers, thank you very much for your time. See you next time.